Hello BookTube, this is Kelly with Books I'm Not Reading, and this is the first video in our read-along series of the Betsy-Tacy books by Maud Hart Lovelace. I'm so excited about this, and I'm so excited to be partnering with Kate Howe and Katie at Life Between Words. I'll link to both their channels down below so you can check out their Betsy-Tacy videos as well. And there also should be a Goodreads group set up if you want to have further discussion on these books, and I will have that link down below as well. So first of all, I just want to tell you a little bit about the author. Here is, before she was Maud Hart Lovelace, when she was Maud Hart, a picture of her. She was born in 1892 in Mankato, Minnesota, and that is the basis for Deep Valley. The first book takes place in 1897, which is when Maud and her characters also happen to turn 5. And she created these books based on her own life experiences when she had a daughter and her daughter wanted bedtime stories. So she began telling her these stories that eventually were to become the Betsy-Tacy books. So obviously Betsy is based on Maud, and Tacy is based on Frances Bick Kenny, and I think the Bick is because she has red hair, and so people called her Bricks. But growing up, she couldn't say Bricks, so she was Bick instead. And Tacy is actually short for Anastasia. They meet at Maud's 5th birthday party, just like in the book, and Bick gives Maud here we go. She gives her this little glass pitcher. And the fact that this pitcher, and there's the two of them, that's Maud and that's Bick. The fact that this pitcher still exists, is on display in a library, I think really shows the power of childhood friendship, as well as how much people loved these books. And I'm glad that there's a bit of a resurgence, and I hope that we will encourage other people to pick these up. They're very short books. Here are the first two in an anniversary edition that I own, and you can see, yeah, so you could read Betsy-Tacy in an afternoon easily. And feel free to dip in and out of our read-along. It will be very easy for you to catch up. I will be sharing some kind of spoilers in these videos, so I will try to alert you to when that's happening, but just come along with me, okay? Okay, the first thing I wanted to share before we get into the books is a quote from Anne M. Martin, who I know there are many fans of the Babysitter Club series out there. She was the author of those books, and she writes an introduction to one of the first two books. And she says, "These were small stories, things that could happen to anyone. But when Maud Hart Lovelace told small stories, she made them seem big." And I think that's so true for these books, because Betsy-Tacy is, really more a series of vignettes about childhood in a small town. So again, it starts when Betsy turns 5. I instantly felt connected, even though this takes place in such a different time than my own growing up. It's a small town, and I was in charge of, my own recreation, if you will. I just remember the girls in my neighborhood, and we really used our imaginations a lot because we didn't have 200 TV channels. They make up games. They have secret clubs. My favorite example is the sand store. I wish I had thought of that as a child. There's one, so here's a spoiler. So I'll hold the book up over here, and then when I move the book around, I'll be done with the spoiler. So I think one of the most powerful stories in this first book is Tacy's sister actually dies, and Betsy is not allowed to go to the funeral. But one morning, even though it's cold, it's just past Easter, the two of them meet in the street in the morning before anybody else is up. And they go for a walk, they climb a tall tree, and they talk about it. And talk about it in a way that they're trying to understand what's happened. And I found like the way Betsy handled it, like how she is trying to comfort her friend by using her imagination of talking about how Bea knows more than any of them do now that she's in heaven. She knows more than Betsy and Tacy's parents, that she knows more than their teachers at school and that kind of thing. So, and she also tells Tacy that Bea knows everything that's going on with them. And the robins, the birds, fly up to heaven and tell Bea some of the things that are happening. And so Betsy, for some reason, I think has a purple Easter egg still. And she climbs up this very tall tree and puts the purple egg into the bird's nest and says that the robin will take the purple egg to Tacy's deceased sister. And wow, I thought that was really, really beautiful. At the very end of the book, they meet Tib. And Tib is a little bit different than Betsy and Tacy are. So here's the anniversary cover for Betsy, Tacy, and Tib. And this book starts out when the girls are 8. Tib seems to live a more affluent life. There's a hired girl, even though she's an older woman, in the family. Their house seems a little larger, if you will. And but at the same time, Tib is expected to do chores. She's expected to clean. She's expected to learn how to cook. Found that all quite interesting, because Betsy and Tacy don't know anything about cooking or cleaning for sure. They're very good at making messes. But it's very similar. This one's very similar to the first book in the sense that there's a lot of vignettes about their imaginations. And, you know, they do actually go to a circus. They build a fort. They make Mayday baskets, which, man, I loved making Mayday baskets when I was a little girl. I thought that was fantastic. There is this scene where they decide to cut off some of each other's hair. And as usual, they get a little carried away. And Betsy has 2 braids, and Tib cuts off one of them. And the families are a little bit horrified, but anyway, so they all have quite short hair for a while because, you know, half of their hair is missing. And I really enjoyed that story in part because my mother did the same thing. She had 2 braids, and one day at school, for some reason, she decided to cut one of them off, and my grandmother was horrified. And I think my mom has had short hair probably ever since then. So, but without a doubt, the absolute best story in this one is when they decide to make everything pudding. And when I say everything, Betsy and Tacy don't do anything halfway, okay? So they decide, oh, we're gonna make a pudding that has something with everything in it. And Tib, who actually does know a little bit about cooking, knows this is a really bad idea, but she she's a good sport, you know, she goes along with it, but she's just like, well, like, you know, sometimes you put like cornstarch and things to thicken them up or whatever. So it's just wild and outrageous. And fortunately, Betsy and Tacy are really lucky that Tib is there to help them clean up the mess before Betsy's parents get home. So this story instantly reminded me of something special that I own that I want to share with you. This was my mother's. Now, it's not a sampler stove. I do know that she did get to play with a sample of one of these kinds of stoves when she was growing up. One of their relatives had one. See how the front door opens there? And so I think because of her love for that sampler stove, my grandparents bought my mom this, and it's got a little pan with a handle and a couple different pots. I like to think Betsy and Tacy would have made the pudding in that one. It also has a little coal bucket, and there's that. Now, there is a piece missing to this. If you can see all the little squares here, and you just lift those up with the tool, and I don't have the tool. My mom is still looking for this because I don't know why we were having a conversation about toys, but I said, I would really like your old stove. This was something when I was growing up that if I was very good and I would play very quietly, then I could play with the stove. But I had to take excellent care of it, and everything. It's very easy to put apart, and you can see the side there. And my mother had some dolls that were approximately this size, and so I got to play with them a little bit. But I was actually more interested in the stove, which is interesting in hindsight because I don't cook. But I just, it's just a treasure. And like I said, when I was reading Betsy-Tacy and Tib, I really, really thought about that stove and the everything pudding. So they're now kind of linked together. I'm going to end this video with one other little clip of something I want to share with you that is part of my family history. I want to make each of these videos special and unique, and so I'm going to do my best to have something to show you or share with you each video. For February, we are going to be reading Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill. And of course Tib is included as well, I believe. And then Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown. So again, we're still in the kind of the early reader stories. They won't take you long to read. These first 4 books are just magic. So I hope that you will join me in reading these next 2 books, and I can't wait to hear your own thoughts and experiences about these books, and feel free to share childhood stories you have that relate to the books in the comment sections below as well. So thank you so much for watching. Like I said, stick around for this one last little clip, and remember to be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Bye. So I wanted to share with you these little pieces of art that my grandmother made. My grandmother was born in 1927 or 1928. And as I said before, I come from a pretty thrifty family, so I'm guessing that all this material were scraps from other things. But the thing that I love the most is that the hair is red, just like Tacy's. But my grandmother was a redhead, and this is actually her hair. I hope that doesn't creep you out, but I think it's beautiful, and I think it's actually kind of amazing that that it's still red. It's lasted all this time. So I have no idea when she made these. Obviously, she was older than Betsy, Tacy, and Tib. All right, thanks guys. Talk to you soon.